Can we start or should we wait for 5 more minutes for people to join?
Dr. Neil, you can let us know if you are ready for us to start.
RMJC Kumar. Oh. Then
Dr. Neil, you can let us know whenever you are ready, we can start.
Yeah, ready.
Okay. Great, sir. So I'll start.
Dr. Neil,
Good
you can
morning,
let us
everyone.
know whenever you are ready, we can start.
Okay.
Yes. We are ready. We are ready. Yeah, now we are ready.
Okay. Okay. So good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's session. It's a privilege to have such a dedicated group of educators, policymakers, and advocates here today to address a crucial topic in Sri Lanka's educational landscape. My name is Nabila Atta. I am a consultant at CEMCA, and I will be moderating this important conversation today. So, today's session focuses on a topic that is gaining significant attention not only in Sri Lanka but across the globe, mainstreaming students with specific learning disabilities in school education. Our goal is to foster a deeper understanding of the challenges these students face and to discuss strategies to ensure they receive the support and opportunities that they deserve. First, let me thank all of you for taking the time to join us today. Your presence shows a strong commitment to making education more inclusive and accessible for every student, regardless of their learning abilities. To begin our webinar, we are honored to have with us Dr. Bashir Ahmed Shadrach, the Director of Commonwealth Educational Media Center for Asia. CEMCA has been an instrumental in promoting inclusive, equitable, and quality education across the Commonwealth with a strong focus on using media and technology to reach underserved communities. Dr. Shadrach today will be sharing his perspective on the need for inclusive school education and why it's crucial to create learning environments where every child, regardless of their abilities, feels included. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Shadrach.
Thank you, Nabila. Hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. So welcome to the online training program aimed at building the capacity of policymakers and teachers in Sri Lanka, an event well curated by the Ministry of Education Sri Lanka, together with the Commonwealth Educational Media Center for Asia and ChangeInkk Foundation in India. My sincere thanks to Dr. Neil Vatakarwatha, Director of Foreign Services, Ministry of Education, Sri Lanka, who is joined by Dr. Rukmali Kariyavasam, the Additional Secretary at the Ministry, and Dr. Rajapaksha Kumara, Director in the Ministry of Education as well. On their behalf and on behalf of my own colleagues, Ms. Nupur Junjunwala, Ms. Aprajita Singh, and Ms. Purnita Nambiar of ChangeInkk Foundation, and on behalf of my own organization, the Commonwealth Educational Media Center for Asia, I extend my warm welcome to all those present today. We bring this event to celebrate dyslexia and celebrate those who are termed as persons with specific learning disabilities. With this event, Sri Lanka joins the global Go Red campaign that promotes awareness on the issues around dyslexia and aims to remove the stigma attached to it. By going red, we symbolically acknowledge that the institutions and individuals affected by dyslexia are courageous, powerful, bold, confident, determined, and above all, beloved. At this event, I declare that Sri Lanka sees dyslexia in a different light. As we know, learning disabilities are a set of neurodivergent conditions that impact the way individuals process information and learn. These include, as you know, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, along with dyspraxia and many other forms that manifest. Individuals with learning disabilities have usually average or above average IQ, but struggle with processing language which is spoken or written. This may manifest as a difficulty to comprehend, speak, read, write, spell, or do mathematical calculations sometimes. So that said, specific learning disability is one of the many forms of recognized disabilities which are being addressed by nations that have ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Sri Lanka, for one, has enforced protection of the rights of persons with disabilities in 1996 itself and enacted the Compulsory Education Ordinance in 1997. In 2003, Sri Lanka adopted the National Policy on Disability for Sri Lanka. And in 2009, they launched the Framework of Action for Inclusive Education and drafted the National Policy on Inclusive Education in the same year. And we see that in 2016, Sri Lanka had ratified the UN Convention, which they signed in 2007, but they ratified on the 8th of February 2016 and developed an inclusive education plan, a kind of a decade-long plan in the year 2019, which goes up to 2030 to coincide the SDG 4 goals. After signing the UN CRPD in 2007, Sri Lanka ratified, as I mentioned, in 2016. And since then, there has been no looking back. Sri Lanka has championed education for all children, endeavoring to afford equal educational opportunity for all children at all levels, irrespective of their backgrounds. The Education Sector Development Plan 2018 to 2025 of Sri Lanka promotes inclusive education in parallel with strengthening special education. ESDP sets out on a broad priorities contributing to advancing disability inclusive education in Sri Lanka in the following: improving learning facilities and resources in all schools, strengthening special education, inclusive education and non-formal education, defining inclusive education programs and services and gradually implementing the programs to cover 100%. Implementation covers 100% of all schools by 2025. That's their goal. And they are also reducing the number of out-of-school children by increasing access to special education and non-formal education. And as you would have seen in our background paper, the Inclusive Action Plan focuses on 5 critical areas: policy reforms, curriculum adaptation, human resource development, infrastructure enhancement, and awareness promotion. If you look at South Asia, which is home for about 660 million children under the age of 18, approximately 36% of the total population of South Asia. South Asia is also a home to a large number of out-of-school children, about 32 million, 8.2 at the primary level and 23.6 at the secondary level. In a way, it is important for us to think about the out-of-the-school children is because many of these out-of-school children are persons with disability. And this is something that we need to note. And, Sri Lanka has taken a lot of good steps in terms of moving towards 100% accessibility. And this is despite the negative impact of war. And, Sri Lanka has gone through some economic crisis as well. With 100% pupils in grade 1 reaching to grade 5, the Ministry of Education Sri Lanka reports that many children with disability are mainstreamed in regular classrooms and special education units in schools. However, children with disabilities continue to face several barriers to access, participate, and achieve in education. These barriers include many interrelated factors, particularly limited skills of teachers on inclusive teaching, lack of appropriate and accessible infrastructure in schools, and limited scope in the curricula. So this is something that we want to keep at the back of our mind. And recently I chanced upon at least 3 or 4 papers written by Sri Lankan authors who confer the above challenges. For instance, Naina Mohammed and her colleagues in their paper mentioned that children with reading difficulties in Sri Lanka continue to encounter reading difficulties stemming from decoding or linguistic comprehension challenges. Darshini from Ministry of Health, Darshini Hitaraki from the Ministry of Health, Sri Lanka, reports that dyslexia is a specific learning disorder. And in Sri Lanka, there is very limited knowledge of healthcare workers, preschool, primary school teachers that have resulted in delayed identification of children with dyslexia. And it's vital to diagnose the conditions as early as possible for better prognosis. Therefore, it's timely for clinicians and also the preschool, primary school teachers in being trained in early detection, identification, and thus intervention. Senarath Samaruda from University of Colombo states that in her survey, among 100 teachers from 15 schools, revealed that teachers had positive attitude and self-confidence while working with dyslexic children as compared to other group of teachers, particularly the special education teachers. Whereas when it comes to the mainstream teachers, they are finding it hard basically to deal with the system. And this kind of a study also is corroborated by W.A. Nadi Perez from University of York, and fellow authors of this particular study state that in a survey among 705 primary school teachers, they feel that they had minimal readiness to identify and engage with children who have dyslexia type of learning disabilities. So in this context, in discussion with Drs. Tilaka Jayasundara and Dr. Neil Vatakaruwata, the Commonwealth Educational Media Center for Asia, together with ChangeInkk Foundation, is organizing this special event. And this is just the beginning of a long journey in which we hope as ChangeInkk Foundation and Commonwealth Educational Media Center for Asia would continue to work with the Ministry of Education in the following. Basically, to get involved in training teachers to identify specific learning disabilities, develop inclusive classroom strategies, and this webinar would deal with some of those issues, support children who struggle with these disabilities and disorders, but also to help them unlock their potential. And finally, identify how technological tools that are available could be made useful for the teachers in Sri Lanka. So I once again welcome each one of you to this important event. I thank Dr. Geet Oberoi, who has been our resource person, for her contribution and her time spent today with our colleagues in Sri Lanka. I also thank my colleagues, Ms. Nabila Atta, Mr. T. Khalid, Ms. Suman Chowdhury, and Mr. Aflaq Shah, and together with my colleagues in ChangeInkk, Ms. Purnita Nambiar, Ms. Aprajita Singh, and Ms. Nupur Junjunwala, who worked hard as a team to make this online session a reality. So once again, welcome to this 2-hour-long webinar online training session for both policymakers as well as teachers. Thank you. Over to you, Nabila.
Thank you, Dr. Shadrach, for that enlightening introduction. Your words have set the stage perfectly, reminding us of the importance of inclusion in education. Let's quickly move to our next expert of the session, Ms. Nupur Jhunjhunwala. She is one of the founding members of ChangeInkk Foundation, our partner organization for this event. She has been a pioneer in advocating for the rights of individuals with learning disabilities in India. Under her leadership, ChangeInkk has been at the forefront of creating awareness, driving policy reforms, and building an inclusive society. With her extensive experience and deep understanding of policy frameworks, Ms. Junjunwala is uniquely positioned to help us explore the broader policy landscape, and legal structures necessary for mainstreaming students with learning disabilities. We are honored to have her here with us today, and we look forward to learning from her valuable experience. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Nupur Jhunjhunwala.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much, Dr. Shadrach, Nabila, and the COL-CEMCA team, the government of Sri Lanka. It is my honor to be here and share some of our learnings from India and from the rest of the world. We have a fun session set up for you, which will hopefully be very reflective and make you think in a way that is more inclusive, aligning with your overall goals of achieving educational outcomes in the country. Nabila, may I request you to allow me to share presentation? So today I will quickly take you through the topic of how, by unlocking dyslexic potential or the potential of people with learning disabilities, we can rethink learning for a future-ready workforce. Generally, conversations around disabilities don't talk about workforce, future-ready economic growth, and that's what I'm going to try and cover really quickly. If you see, there is a child sitting in the center, looks quite lost. On one side, there's the word duffer. We know that as a person who can't learn or isn't smart enough. And on the other is the word disruptor, because that's the potential that we're not seeing. So who are people with learning disabilities? Try and cover. So who are people with learning disabilities? They're 1 in 5 globally. That means about 20% of the population. They are people who are the inventors, entrepreneurs, scientists, architects, technologists, artists, disruptors of the world. As you see these folks on the screen, you'll recognize that they are all people with learning disabilities. So in general, let's understand what specific learning disabilities are. They include 4 conditions: dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, and dysgraphia. There are differences in the way a person's brain functions, processes, or learns information. While outwardly they are invisible, they're created because of the development of the brain is different, but and the neural pathways that communicate and help us process and learn information gets impacted. It's important to remember that these are individuals with average or above average IQ. So while neural pathways and brain structure is impacted and they manifest as slow learners or maybe looking like slow learners, they have average or above average IQ. It's a lifelong condition. You can't just be cured from a learning disability. In fact, that's what differentiates a learning disability from learning loss. It runs in families. However, accommodations and assistive technologies help them excel through their life. So dyslexia, what is dyslexia? It struggles with language. It is the most common, about 80% of all. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it's visible.
So it's dyslexia struggles with language. It's the most common of all, about 80% of all learning disabilities. We must remember that when I talk about dyslexia, it's the common word used for all encompassing learning disabilities. This is just a way that it manifests. For some, you see mirroring, you see movement of words, you see it may be wavy, you may see disappearing. It's also known as a print disability. Dyscalculia struggles with math and mathematical concepts. Dysgraphia is the struggle in fine motor skills and writing, not just holding the pen, but also being able to express thought in the written form. And finally, SLDs struggle impact all their lives because of the name and its such close linkages to academic and learning goals. We forget that SLDs impact the overall life of a child. They have a gap in oral written performances. They struggle with planning, memory. They are slow in processing information. They have difficulty in planning because their notion of time is impacted, and they're often sensitive to overstimulation, light, sound, movement. Yet, dyslexic thinking drives us all forward. It powers our life. I don't think we can live without most of these inventions and industries. These are all the brainchild of a person with a learning disability. It drives our imagination. You'll see some of the world's best authors, actors, producers, directors, script writers, lyricists, painters were dyslexic. It generates employment. Then this is the key, right? 40% of self-made millionaires are a learning disability, and it drives productivity. Globally, there's a huge movement um, to hire people with learning disabilities and other neurodiverse conditions to drive productivity and innovation. So now this is a contradiction. Is it a disability? Is it learning impact? What is this? If they're so smart and can do so many things, why are they in the disability category? It's because dyslexics think differently. The way their brain is wired, the same conditions that sort of impact their ability to process language helps them build higher order thinking abilities, which include visualizing, innovation, communication, reasoning, connecting the dots, problem solving, and seeing the big picture. These are all the higher order skills and competencies that the world has come together and identified as skills of the future. And globally, universities recognize this, right? So they are inviting these students into their campuses to drive this conversation. So 80% of the world's dyslexics attribute their success to this dyslexic thinking. It's not a luck by chance situation. They're 40% of the world's self-made millionaires. Top 10 companies, including them, can increase GDP by 1.2% annually. And Fortune 500 companies are attracting them. And yet only 3% believe it's a positive trait. Only 1 in 20 gets identified. And they have a 35% higher chance of dropping out. They have a 73% higher chance of hiding it. And most people don't understand it. So why should you and me care about this? Because the difference between creating support systems for them and non-support systems is very, very stark. If given support, they learn to thrive and change the world, excelling in arts, business, science, STEM subjects. Whereas if you don't provide them support, they have a great 46% higher chance of attempting suicide, falling prey to delinquency, drug abuse, and they have a 35% higher chance of dropping out by class 8. So in order for time, I just want to sort of really quickly go through what is it that a government and schools can do in terms of looking at it. What does mainstreaming look like? Firstly, it has to start from the beginning, not as an afterthought. It needs to be cross-cutting across all aspects of the educational system. It needs to be part of the planning in anything you do. And remember that when you do, you don't just increase outcomes for this group, 20% of the student base, also for the overall student community.
Participants?
May I request people to mute?
Please mute your
Identify.
mic.
Nayana Indayani innava. Samantha Gunatilaka innava.
So identification and screening is the first step. It helps narrow achievement gap. You catch them early and you can reduce the learning gaps, preventing dropouts, improving learning outcome, as well as boosting self-esteem. Identification should happen at 3 levels. The academics, which is initiated by the teacher, generally around grade 3 or age 8. This is the impact on learning, right? Mirroring, not able to spell, not able to write, those kind of things. And Dr. Geeth Oberoi will get into this later in our presentation. Daily life skills, executive functioning or life skills that we talk, and then emotional well-being. Now, we must remember that everybody falls into this category sometime in their life. It's when you're consistently on all 3 that a child has a chance of having a learning disability. If we look at only academics, we may confuse those who have learning loss for multiple reasons versus those who have a disability. Now, this is the only disability that the identification starts with the teacher in the classroom. And then, of course, once you screen it, it's not enough. You must do a formal diagnosis, which is a 3-step process. One is a clinical assessment to ensure that the child doesn't have visual or hearing impairment. An IQ assessment, remember I mentioned you have to have average or above average IQ. And then there is an SLD battery that is applied. It has to be done in the local language, age appropriate and academic level. Generally, when diagnosed, these children should be about a year and a half below their class level. So what is it that you all should be talking about? Empowering the teacher on learning disabilities, mandating that every child who doesn't meet learning outcomes is screened, or providing the tools, and then nudging behavioral change, where a child who doesn't meet, in the learning outcome, whether it's report cards, assessment surveys, every time a child doesn't meet learning outcomes, you should screen them for a learning disability, and then link the school to the health services where they can get the diagnosis. And out of school children must all be screened for learning disabilities. Then comes what we talk about remedial intervention. We believe that this is for all disabilities. In SLDs in particular, the focus is on language, executive functioning, and special educations to learn academic skills like reading, writing, and math. It's conducted by a special educator. It supplements classroom instruction, and it happens in the school as well as outside of school as part of rehabilitation. So rehabilitation services could require occupational therapy and speech therapy. And then finally, you need to also provide social emotional support for anxiety, depression, bullying, low self-esteem, things like that. Accommodations become a big tool. These are things like providing extra time, a reader scribe, alternative subjects, choices, text to speech, speech to text, giving extra time, those kind of support. These should start from grade 1 to 12, from the time a child is identified with a disability up to the time they leave school and beyond, even in higher education. Remedial support is required within the school. We often put them in resource centers outside, but when it comes to learning disabilities, these children need it while they go to school 3 to 4 times a week. The ratio generally should be 1:5. You require a nodal teacher in every school to coordinate needs of children with special needs. This could be an existing teacher who can be upskilled or hiring a new teacher. You require TLMs and teaching learning materials and accessible infrastructure, aids and tools. Again, Dr. Geet Oberoi will get into some of this at the school level. Then becomes teaching. It's important to create inclusive learning pathways. Traditional learning might not help these students. Also, this helps improve learning outcomes for everyone. And I'm going to go through this really quickly. The key is to recognize the dyslexic strengths and create those pathways for them within that bit, where we nurture their strengths. We don't try and fix their disability, encourage them to participate in educational pathways in STEM, the arts, and entrepreneurship, and develop curriculum. As you develop curriculum, learning, teaching material, whether it's textbooks, workbooks, item banks, worksheets, e-learning content, make sure it's accessible. They use the principles of universal design learning. The teacher is empowered to adapt what is being taught in the classroom as per the curriculum for all students in the classroom. So supposing there is a child with a disability in the class, how does that, if the child cannot see, do you show cards, show flashcards? What is the other alternative to that way of teaching? This has to focus on the general teacher. It should become part of teacher training, both pre-service, when they are learning to become teachers as part of your B.Ed programs, DLED programs, not just special education programs. general teacher education programs, and as part of ongoing professional development programs that teachers participate in. Beyond teaching strategies, it's important to teach them classroom management strategies, lesson planning, and how to create individual educational plans, and how to integrate technology into it. And then when assessments are done, we need to ensure that assessments are also adapted using accommodations and the way questions are asked for children with learning disabilities. Finally, we get into leveraging tech. Tech is all encompassing. There's a part about hardware, that's laptops, tablets, or smartphones. There's software, word processing, like MS Office, Google, those kind of suites. They all have inbuilt accessibility features. E-learning, content that's being created, allowing low tech. So solutions like a calculator, you can use a regular phone, you can use TV, and then finally emerging AI solutions that really help these children write better. Assistive tech should be made available for students with special needs, especially those with learning disabilities. They should be made available to teacher for their training as well as to classroom management, and at the school level through ICT labs, smart classrooms. The key to success is integrating this tech in everyday learning. Things to consider is whether you give it as an individual support or shared access, how edtech content is created, and whether you use proprietary solutions or mainstream. We strongly encourage using mainstream, readily available. It's available on all platforms. And finally, we have to remember that a child is at the center of this, has to do a medical diagnosis, has to learn, has to needs remediation, requires technology, requires support to succeed. And there are multiple points which ultimately have to converge into a school. And that's where inclusive education succeeds. It's not a fragmented approach, but an approach that converges at the school level. Any exemplar inclusive school should have we believe, four main pillars. One is establishing a special education program which addresses a child's support needs, is driven by special educators, headed by a special education coordinator, provides the remedial support I discussed earlier. It also coordinates a child's special need with special needs, various services requiring accommodation, requiring diagnosis, certification needs to be renewed, subjects need to be dropped, all of that coordination, and work with teachers, parents, other students, administration on coordinating this for the child. Then an inclusive culture within the school where it's not only about teachers, but students and parents are also sensitized. Strengthening of teacher capacity to deliver this within the classroom. And then finally, the school should have the linkages externally, whether it's disability support, whether it's healthcare support, to make this a success. Now, I will conclude. It says mandate CWSN provisions, or mandate provisions for inclusion across all education interventions. You cannot just put it in an inclusive education component somewhere sitting, creating outside the box policies which are not mainstreamed into this. This has to happen in close coordination with all your other groups within the department. Third is it has to work at 3 levels, supporting the student at the school and with the stakeholders involved. And then you must closely monitor this. It's not enough to say, humne de diya, or we just gave it to you, but you're not able to then check if children are getting it, and you'll get stuck in a vicious cycle that most countries get into. No identification, so no support, so no admission. And then it becomes a challenge. And with that, I end. If there's time permitting, I'm happy to take questions.
We have a question answer session reserved for later. Okay. So, if you allow, we can move forward.
Yes, please do.
Yeah. So, thank you, Ms. Roper, for context setting and helping us understand the potential of children with specific learning disabilities for a future ready workforce. Keeping the time limitation in mind, let us quickly welcome our next esteemed speaker, Dr. Rukmali Karyavasam, the Additional Secretary of the Ministry of Education of Sri Lanka. The Ministry of Education Sri Lanka has been instrumental in helping us materialize this webinar. Dr. Rukmali has been a key figure in shaping the educational landscape of Sri Lanka to make education more inclusive and equitable for all students. Today, he will be discussing the Sri Lankan context surrounding the mainstreaming of students with learning disabilities. As someone who is deeply involved in the formulation and implementation of national education policies, he brings a wealth of knowledge and first hand experience in addressing the challenges and opportunities in creating an inclusive education system for every child in Sri Lanka. We are truly fortunate to have him here with us today to share his insights. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Rukmali Karyavasam. Mr. Neil, has Dr. Rukmali joined? Let me just check if he has joined or he'll be joining, or we can take our next speaker. Give us a moment to figure out. The speaker will be joining in a few minutes.
Okay. We'll do that. Sure. So, Nabila, you can invite Dr. Rajapaksha Kumara to
Okay.
speak. He will speak now.
Okay, sir. So we'll move on to our next speaker for the session. It is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Rajapaksha Kumara, the Deputy Director of Education from the Non-Formal and Special Education Branch. Dr. Kumara has been deeply involved in spearheading efforts to support students with special educational needs, and today he will be sharing insights into the initiatives undertaken by Sri Lanka to mainstream students with specific learning disabilities. We look forward to hearing about the strides made in creating a more inclusive education system. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Kumara. Dr. Kumara? Uh, Dr. Shadrach, is there a problem with his connection?
I won't know. 1 minute. Let us see.
Okay,
There is a lot of confusion here.
okay.
I think, yeah.
If he's having issues, maybe we can start with our keynote speaker only.
Wait, Nabila.
Okay.
Yes, Dr. Kumara is joined. We are waiting for him to speak, actually.
Yes, I informed Mr. Kumar.
Okay. Thank you. So maybe we can ask Dr. Geet O'Brien to start, Nabila, and when Dr. Kumara joins us back,
Yeah.
he can.
Sure, sir. Uh, mm, okay, so we can start with Dr. Geet O'Brien. She's the founder of Orchids, a pioneer organization focused on educational and training solutions for children with learning disabilities. Dr. O'Brien has vast experience in the field of special education and is a renowned advocate for creating inclusive classroom. Today, she will be discussing the importance of understanding specific learning disabilities and how we can build truly inclusive classrooms to support every student. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Geeta Brai.
Thank you. Namaskar, everyone. Am I able to share my screen?
We can't see it yet, Dr. Geeta.
No, have I been given the rights to do it is what I meant.
Okay.
Here we go.
Yes, you can see it now.
So you can see it? All right.
Yes.
Before I go further, I have a request with I'm a person or an adult with dyscalculia and ADHD myself. So if not too much of an issue, can I have everybody's videos on? Because talking to blank screen is mostly I will get distracted. So if it's not an issue, I would request everybody to put their videos on, especially the teachers. I want this session to be interactive as much as possible. In case on any slide anybody has a question, please feel free to write it in the chat and I will be looking at it periodically. If possible, I will answer your query right away or I'll wait for the question answers at the end. Only because I tend to get distracted and I'll forget my train of thought if I'm talking about specific. So it's best to just deal with it there itself. Having said that, welcome to the session and thank you for having me over. So here we go. Building capacities of policymakers, teachers of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka might be another country, but, we are pretty much the same. So, the kind of education system, the kind of education climate rather, children, parents, teachers, more or less are the same, is what I feel. And, learning from each other like we're doing right now is the only way to learn. There is no need at all to reinvent the wheel. There is no need to put our efforts, our minds, our resources into something which our neighbors have already done and they are prospering with it. The children are improving with it. In today's world, it is very, very necessary for us as adults and as maybe pioneers or, key stakeholders to model the fact that we can learn from each other and the kids then see that happening and do the same, right? So here I go. My focus today will be learning disabilities or specific learning disabilities like the nature of the talk. And the tagline here you see says, because the disability may be invisible, but the child is not. As we already know, or most of us would know, that Specific learning disabilities is a kind of disability which is invisible. When I say invisible, it means that you see a person and you cannot make out that the person has learning disabilities. Whether you talk about Tom Cruise, or you talk about Whoopi Goldberg, or you talk about Richard Branson, or you go, there are so many successful persons with learning disabilities who unless said it themselves that they have it, we wouldn't have known. Right? So that is the reason why we call it invisible disabilities. No child has it written on his forehead that I have dyslexia or I have dysgraphia. It is through his actions, through his behavior, through his performance that we infer that this child may have a genuine problem. And that's the reason why we as teachers are not able to help him the way we are helping everybody else around. So that is the reason why this whole exercise of empowering the teacher is taking place, right? Because you are the first people, the first respondents, literally the first respondents to figure out that I think something is wrong with this child, because specific learning disabilities is an academic skills issue. It's a reading, writing, comprehension, spelling, math, organization problem. And where do we see all these things happening the most? In the classroom. So even before the parents have any clue, it is the teacher, especially that careful, sensitive teacher, the observant teacher, who will be able to say, I think something's going on besides the regular development in this child. So that's the reason why this, we are here, your leaders of the country are here, Nupur is here to make sure that we put the system in place so that teachers are the first ones to figure out. So the learning disabilities, now there is not only one learning disability, one invisible disability. So there are a few invisible disabilities for which there are no physical manifestations. And you might have all of them in your classroom. One is specific learning disabilities that I've just mentioned. Then there is something which is called slow learners. I don't know whether this phrase is commonly used in Sri Lanka, but basically implies below average IQ. That means a child may have some impairment or some small degree or mild degree of impairment in his intellectual abilities. Next is the mild autism spectrum disorder, which is ASD, and attention deficit hyperactive disorder. Out of all these 4 disabilities, the incidence or the prevalence of specific learning disabilities is the highest. Worldwide prevalence rate is almost around 10 to 12% of a classroom. And in the Indian classrooms, we have minimum about 40, 45 kids in a class. So imagine in a classroom of 40 kids, there are at least 4 kids who may have this disability and we have no clue about it. So that's the reason we need to really wake up and make sure that we are there for each and every child in a classroom. So imagine if one class has 4 kids, the whole school may have, almost close to 100 kids, if not more. Out of all these 4 which you see in front of you, in India, we have 2 disabilities which are covered by the PWD Act. Covered by the PWD Act, which is specific learning disabilities and autism. Unfortunately, slow learners and ADHD are not yet recognized by the Indian government. So these are the children who make us wonder. They make us wonder why? Because they look fine, they talk fine, they play brilliant games, they may be fantastic singers, they may be fantastic artists, but once it comes to their spelling, their reading, their writing, their math, they are way, way below average. They are way below the expected level of what you want the child to do. So if you were to look at this little visual I've put here, look at the spelling, the way the spellings are done. The child has written what he hears, the sound he hears, but the spellings are incorrect. Look at the one right at the bottom, which talks about, which shows you how the child is copying the words. And of course, the green one on the left side, which shows you that the child is seeing all the script on the page absolutely inverted, which is upside down. So these are the kind of problems the kids will have if they have issues with specific learning disabilities. So how do we as teachers view them? Some of us may call them immature, some may call them slow learners, some may call them lazy, not interested, troublemakers, dumb, duffers. There are a huge number of, what's it called, descriptive phrases that we have for our kids. Now, the point is this, that I'm not saying that the teachers are really mean and they don't have love for their kids, or they think that these kids are not good enough to be in their class. No such thing. It's just that we as teachers may not be aware about what the kids are actually going through. Because we have never been trained. Our programs, our teacher training programs are not equipped to deal with what SLD is. So that's why we have no idea. We just have these kids in our classes who are not performing, despite the fact that we have taught them. And we will call them names because, hey, I'm a great teacher. And, if 30 kids in my class can pick up, why the hell these kids who are 2 kids, 3 kids, 4 kids not picking up? It's not my fault. It's their fault. They are lazy, they are duffers, they are troublemakers, they are naughty, they are not interested, their parents are not interested. So all these things run through our heads. Just a thought. And it's a very pertinent thought. Maybe these are the kind of things which stays with the teacher. Labels are for jars. Jars we have in our kitchens, which have the names of spices and masalas written on it. The labels are not for our kids. So let's step back and just pause before we give some kind of a label to a child, because maybe that label is very, very, very misleading. So what could be wrong with these kids? These kids who are having these issues of reading or writing or spelling or math, even attention, what could be wrong? Now, genuinely, there could be lots of reasons for it, but out of all reasons, one of the most important reasons is that these kids who we constantly mislabel could have a disability, could have a neurological problem, which is called specific learning disabilities, which is hidden because the kids look absolutely normal like any other child. All right. It is just that they function differently, they work differently, they perform differently in the classroom. All right, I'm just looking at the chat. That's fine. Yes, I totally agree with Miss Nabila. I'm good with that. So next is, what are specific learning disabilities? Now, there are most important, these are the 4 bullets which I want you all to take back with you. Please don't worry about, don't take pictures, don't worry about not remembering this, because this is recorded. And if it's not shared, I am giving you the, the permission to just give this PPT out to all the teachers in case they want to go over it later on at their, when they have time. So learning disabilities is an umbrella term for a wide variety of learning problems. So if you look at your right, you will see there is a blue umbrella. And under the umbrella, we have dyslexia, we have dyspraxia, we have dyscalculia, we have dysgraphia, we have nonverbal learning disabilities. So specific learning disability is actually an umbrella term, and it has different types of learning problems which are categorized depending upon what the signs and symptoms of the child are. Another most important, I would say, the starting point of understanding the child is that learning disabilities has got nothing to do with your intelligence. Please remember, I want all of you to see my face here, and please remember this. that this is the first ground rule of screening a child, identifying a child, and starting to help the child, starting the remedial cycle of the child, that IQ, intellectual quotient, has absolutely nothing to do with specific learning disabilities. On the contrary, to have a diagnosis of specific learning disabilities, you have to have normal IQ. If you have below normal IQ, it is not SLD. It could be anything else. It could be ID. It could be, autism. It could be anything else. It could be even below average IQ, but it is not SLD. Please remember that. You can have an IQ of 140 and still have dyslexia. You can have an IQ of 160 and still have dyspraxia. Einstein, I'm sure we all know who Einstein was. Einstein had an astronomical IQ of 160, but he was still a learning disabled individual. So please remember that learning disabilities is separate from intellectual disability. Very important for us to remember that. Next is, they are not lazy, they are not dumb, but they're as smart as everybody else. In fact, I'm not sure if some of you know or are privy to the fact that in today's world, nowadays, the notion of dyslexic thinking or dyslexic thinkers is taking, it's coming up in a very big way. It is actually taken as a strength because persons with dyslexia or persons with learning disabilities have strengths which are now sought after. People in the workplace, people in corporates are looking out for people or looking out for persons or individuals who have dyslexia, because their strengths, which actually include visual communication and problem solving, to name a few, are brilliant. In fact, they are above the curve of the rest of the population. So they are not dumb, they're not lazy, they are as smart and in some ways even smarter than some of the kids. They could be, great sports people, they could be great singers, they could be great artists, they could be great dancers. So we just have to make sure that we are not stuck or we are not wearing our blinkers on and saying that success means reading, writing, math. If a person has to achieve, they have to achieve inside the classroom. Not true, not true at all. We have to think beyond the classroom. These kids have their brains simply wired differently. The word wired here basically means the connections between the right side and the left side of the brain. Guys, we have hemisphere of the brain. So the connectivity between the right and the left side of the brain is through neural pathways. All right. These are these grooves which are cut across our hemispheres. And these pathways in a dyslexic brain are different from the way a normal or a neurotypical brain is wired. That's about it as far as the neurology is concerned. So remember, it is the brain involvement which is leading to SLD. It's not attitude. It is not laziness. It's not that the child is really wanting to make you mad and he's naughty. He's not. It's a genuine problem. Somebody is asking a question. Please write it down. I will look at it. The difference, this wiring of the brain, which is different, actually affects how the children perceive and process information, how they receive it and how they process it. It doesn't mean that the child needs glasses. It doesn't mean the child needs hearing aids. It's just that just because the child sees a B instead of a D, stick and ball, ball and stick, they see a B, but they think it's a D. It's the way the brain is processing the information. Making the child wear a pair of glasses is not going to make the BD reversal go away. All right. So this is what we need to understand. That is the reason learning new information can be difficult for people with LD. So the children who have LD, because of their wiring, which is different, learn new information either differently or take slightly longer to learn, or maybe need more practice, more drill, or more rehearsal with the information. Learning disabilities affects both children and adults. So this is another thing. So once a dyslexic, always a dyslexic. There is no magical cure. There is no Ayurveda. There is no homeopathy. There is no medicine which will make you undyslexic. If you are dyslexic, you remain dyslexic for life. However, early intervention, you catch the children young, then you can work with them and they learn the coping strategies, how to deal with their deficits. All right. So we have, let me see, we have 99 people here in this group. So out of these 99 people, there are at least 10 people in this group who have dyslexia or dysgraphia or dyscalculia. I'm one of them. So I don't know how many of them, how many of you know that you may have a problem. It's undiagnosed. You are still doing wonderfully well. You are working, you are helping other children. You're in place where you can make a difference in so many people's lives, including children and families. So there you go, you know. So dyslexics or persons with learning disabilities can be very, very, very successful in life. And you don't have to open your eyes. You just have to go online and see. All the fantastic innovations are because of dyslexia, are because they're divergent thinking, are because of the way they solve problems. All right. Good morning to you. Somebody saying use modern technology, direct them to technology is good for students with SLD. Yes, absolutely true. Bang on, sir. You are absolutely right. And we will also talk about how technology is helping us in actually identifying children early in life in a little while. Here we go. So like I said, learning disabilities is found both in children and in adults. However, you can catch a child earlier, right? But an adult which goes undiagnosed might face other added, challenges, struggles because of the harrowing time they may have had in school because of the non or under identification. So here I had just mentioned that it is to do with the brain. It is to do with it's neurobiological. That's the reason why it's there. So this is and you don't have to believe me because I'm saying so. You can believe me when I'm showing this proof to you guys. This is a fMRI, MRI. So fMRI is a functional MRI, which means that it takes pictures of the brains when it's actually functioning. It's actually doing a task. All right. So if you look at the top row, it says controls, which means neurotypical or normal brains. The below row is picture of a brain which is of to dyslexic. The first column, pattern under pattern, means that the brain is at rest. Nothing is happening. The person is not doing any activity. And the motion means, the second column means that those brains are actually doing the activity. In this case, the activity of reading. So if you were to control both the brains at rest, the first column, you'll see the normal brain and the dyslexic brain are activated the same. The orange part is the activation, the brain areas which are activated. All right. So you will see it's more or less the same when they are at rest. But when, look at column 2, please. When the brains are reading, please look at the areas of activation, the orange areas in a normal brain, and look at the limited areas which are working in a dyslexic brain. So here is enough proof for us that yes, it is the involvement of the brain which causes dyslexia. It is not anybody's attitude. Again, it's not the child's laziness, it's not the child's naughtiness, which is causing this issue. So what specific learning disabilities isn't? So this is another thing we have to keep in mind, especially when we are probing or when we are trying to identify the issues, the problems, or the causes of the underperformance in our classrooms. You guys get a child in your classroom, Sarah. So you see the Sarah is not doing really well in the classroom, and you know, she plays around, she looks fine, she talks fine, she's very good artist, and she's really good football player also. But there's something wrong somewhere. You know, you're not able to pinpoint as to what's wrong. So how are you going to figure this out is you will do what is called an elimination round in your mind or while talking to other teachers who also teach this child, Sarah. So we have to keep in mind that specific learning disabilities or learning disabilities, guys, sorry, I did not say this before, learning disabilities like it's called in the West, which is America and Australia and so on and so forth, they call it learning disabilities. In India, we call it specific learning disabilities, just as UK, United Kingdom, all right? But it's exactly the same. It means the same thing. So the learning problems which is caused due to learning disabilities can be also seen, or similar problems are also the result of visual and hearing impairment. A child has a visual hearing impairment. He is not deaf or blind, but has some issues. That child will have similar problems. A child with motor handicap, for example, there is some problem in the child's fine motor skills in terms of muscles, you know, hands and fingers and so on. The child will have same graphomotor, which is writing problems. Mental retardation, the child will again have skill-based problems, unable to read, unable to write. Emotional disturbance, very important in today's times. A lot of homes have a lot of emotional disturbance happening inside them, under, you know, behind closed doors, and that could lead to the child's performance dropping tremendously. And this emotional disturbance could be something like, you know, the parents are conflicted, it's a single parent family, somebody's died, you know, in the family. So all this emotional disturbance or turmoil also gets the performance to come down, or of environmental, cultural, or economic disadvantage. So these pointers also lead to learning problems, but those learning problems are not learning disabilities. So we have to do what is called differential diagnosis and know for ourselves that yes, the child may have issues. For this reason alone, you know, for the first one, what we do is whenever we have a child who's showing these kind of problems, what we tell the parent is, please get a hearing test and a vision test done for the child. For all you know, the child is not writing in the books because he can't see the board. The blackboard is too far away. He's not able to figure out what's written on the blackboard, and he's not able to copy it because he can't see anything, right? And he's not able to make the b sound or sounds which are very, very similar. So from that point of view, if an auditory discrimination test is done or a eye checkup is done, then we make sure that it's nothing to do with the ears and nothing to do with the eyes. And then we move forward. Very, very important. There was a time during when I was in school, which was like 100 years ago, you know, it was mandatory as a health checkup to have eyes and ears of all children tested. I don't see that happening very often nowadays in today's times in the schools. I don't know what the scenario is in Sri Lanka, but I think that's one thing which should come back really fast, because that way we'll catch a lot of children who are not performing in the class because of lack of glasses, or maybe at sometimes some mild hearing issues. Are you guys with me?
Yes, we are here.
All right, so summing up, the facts, the learning disability facts are average or above average intelligence. Like I said, you have to have minimum of 90 IQ or maximum, the sky is the limit. The difficulties are in writing, reading, math, organization, and social skills. All these difficulties are common. They're very common, 4 to 40, 4 in a classroom of 40 kids, 10% to 12%. It's it's a big number. In India alone, guys, imagine it is 35 million. 35 million. It's probably bigger than populations of some countries in the world. 35 million children who have specific learning disabilities in India alone. It's a lifelong problem. Once you have dyslexia, you cannot become undyslexic, and it ranges from mild to severe. The brain processes information differently. That we got, that notion got reinforcement by the pictures of the fMRI. And these children have great abilities, which we've already spoken about. So if you have a child who has dyslexia or dysgraphia or dyscalculia or SLD in your classroom, you are blessed if you use their skills and their strengths appropriately. So these are the different kinds of learning disabilities. Dyslexia is a language and reading disability, all right? So the child, dys means difficulty, lexia means word. So all dys means difficulty with, right? So dyslexia is difficulty with words or reading, and it's a language-based disability. Dyscalculia, as the name says, is difficulty or problems with arithmetic and math concepts. Dysgraphia is a writing disorder. Guys, am I on?
You're audible now.
Okay, yeah. So here there was some power glitch. You can see the screen.
No, you have to recast, I think.
Okay, hold on. Can you see it now?
Yeah, we can see it now.
All right, thank you. So here, so dyscalculia is difficulty or problems with arithmetic and math concept. Dysgraphia, like the word says, is difficulty with writing. Graphia is writing, the graphomotor, which includes poor expression and handwriting, which means the how of writing as to how your handwriting is and what you're writing, the content. The poor expression is the content. So both these aspects are affected. Dyspraxia is problems with motor coordination, which includes fine motor, which is using our smaller muscles like, our fingers, like writing, like using cutlery, or buttoning and unbuttoning, where tying laces, doing painting, or brushing and drawing. So all these activities where we use our fingers is fine motor, and gross motor is the bigger muscles like the limbs and the arms, like in sports or dance. This dyspraxia is also called sensory integration disorder. Now, there is another learning disabilities, which unfortunately is not recognized by the Persons with Disability Act in India, but it is there, which is called non-verbal learning disabilities, which is NVLD. And this affects the social and organizational skills. So it's almost like a social interaction disability. These children don't pick up the social body language and facial clues, and they're not able to gauge the social scenario and respond or react appropriately. Attention deficit hyperactive disorder is another disability. It is not the same as SLD. However, both SLD and ADHD go hand in hand, which means that the association between these two disabilities is extremely high. In today's world, though I have written here, you will see it's only 20 to 30%, but in today's day and age, the association between the two is as high as 60%. So that means out of 10 children who have SLD, 6 will also have ADHD. So attention deficit hyperactive disorder is a condition that becomes apparent in some children in the preschool and early school years by age 6. So ADHD is something where it is it's a continuum. When you say a continuum, it's like a ruler, a scale, right? On one side is ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactive disorder. And on the other side is ADD without the hyperactivity. So on one side, there's a child who just is not able to sit, totally distracted, hyperactive, is running around in the class, not able to sit for more than 5 seconds, sharpening their pencil, opening their desk, putting the desk down, hitting the child next to them, disturbing the whole class because he's just not able to sit. And on the other hand, it's a child who's absolutely lost in the class. The teacher is talking, the children are doing the work, and this child who has ADD has no clue. So he doesn't have the hyperactivity, but is as lost in terms of performing in the classroom, has no clue what's going on, looking out of the window at the butterfly, which is, flying outside, or the little bug, which is crawling on the ground. So that is the continuum. So the child or children can have either ADHD or ADD, or sometimes even a combination of both, sometimes ADHD and sometimes ADD. The most important thing is this: for the diagnosis of ADHD, you have to see the signs of ADHD before the child turns 6. A person cannot suddenly become ADHD at the age of 12 or 13. If the person is showing, or the child is showing, or an individual is showing signs like ADHD after 6, like, maybe at 10, 12, 15, 17, 20, that means they have some issue. There could be some issue in the brain which is leading to this kind of symptoms. And there have been researches here, and it has shown that some people who have had accidents where their brain has been, certain areas of the brain have been injured, brain injury has shown similar signs as a child who has ADHD. It is hard for these children to control their behavior and or pay attention. ADHD is not considered to be a learning disabilities, but many children with ADHD, approximately 20 to 30 I've written here, but it's up to 60% now, also have SLD. In a lot of cases, medication is advised to help control the condition. Guys, please remember that for ADHD, can make a difference. In cases where the condition is really severe, a cause of harm to himself or to the others, a clinical psychologist, a special educator cannot advise medication. So please be very careful on this. But in mild cases of ADHD, occupational therapy and special education suffices. They will do the trick of getting the child to learn how to sit and engage effectively in a classroom. Please ask me any questions. If you have one, don't forget. Medication can only be prescribed by a child psychiatrist, like I've said. How am I doing with time, Nabila? Please let me know.
You are okay for time, ma'am. Just a few more minutes you can take. 10.
No, I will probably take more than a few minutes. I started late, remember?
Okay.
So,
You are
so
the
what?
expert.
Yes, thank you very much. Although I'm not expert on timekeeping, but yes. All right, guys. So now you guys are teachers. So you guys now know what is it that the children may have or show. All right. So what do you do if you suspect a child has LD or SLD? You can refer a child to an educational clinic, to a learning center or a special educator, or to a qualified private practitioner. I mean, a clinical psychologist. You tell the parent that you take them to a special educator or take it to a psychologist for an assessment. The evaluation, during an assessment should be based on history of school performance, which basically implies that the previous classes, teachers should be asked, was the child, underperforming even in the previous class, or is it suddenly? If it suddenly happened, that means it's not learning disabilities. It could be something else, right? Remember the emotional disturbance we talked about? It's a possibility. Family background. Family background will give us a good idea. Why? Because specific learning disabilities runs in the family. It is from the father's side of the genes. And it's a possibility when you meet with the parents, the father will say, oh, ma'am, I was like him only during school. My brother was like him. My father was like him. So you will know that you're on the right track because the child will have. How to act with children who have autism in the class. Sir, that's another workshop. Please ask ma'am to. For autism, I will, sorry. The initial steps will remain the same, whatever I'm sharing with you for all invisible disabilities. The idea is to, help them at least to start the process of remediation and then let the special educator take over. Coming back to family background, please probe and ask if there's anybody else in the family who requires it. Physical checkup, like I told you, the eye test and the ears test to rule out if the child needs glasses or hearing aids. Ability, the IQ check to make sure the child has at least normal IQ, if not or more. Language development test, very important in countries like ours and maybe even yours. Like most tests are made in in the West. They all are English. So what if I am actually testing a child who doesn't know English and there are no tools available in their native language, right? So then that's a problem, because a child who's really smart and his only problem is that he doesn't know English might be portrayed as a child with learning disabilities because he doesn't know English. So it's a language problem. It is not a learning disability. So that has to be looked into. Next is academic assessment. Academic assessments are basically those assessments which tell us the functioning level of the child. And these are represented as class levels. So maybe a child of class 5 is taking the evaluation or assessment. And by doing the academic assessments, we will be able to figure out that he's sitting in class 5, but he's actually working at class 2 level or class 3 level also. So it gives us an idea as to where we begin or pitch our remediation program. So management. So now we know we have a child, we screened a child, we did an assessment of the child. So we've reached here. Now what do we do? So the management plan for children with learning problem is two-pronged. So it goes two ways, but it's a balance between the two. It's called accommodations and it's called intervention. Accommodation is that we bypass the problem, ignore the problem, and we provide supports in the environment, in the system. For example, a child, Sarah, remember Sarah sitting in the class? She was unable to read, so we give her a reader. She's unable to write, we give her a scribe or a writer. Her handwriting is very slow, we give her extra time. So what do? We change the environment. We change our own parameters to make sure we gauge how much she knows. What is her knowledge level? All right. We are not going to do a speed test for her, because writing for those 3 hours will tell us whether her handwriting or graphomotor skill is at par. It will not tell us whether she has the knowledge of, math or science or English and so on. So the accommodation is basically done by you guys. When I say you guys, I mean the teachers. I'll come to that in a moment. Intervention is the other prong, which is we address the problem and the goal is to cover the deficits. So in case of Sarah, the problems of reading, writing she had, the special educator will sit with her and will work on her writing skills and on her reading skills one-on-one or in a small group. So this is something which you have to again understand, guys. Accommodation is your job. I'm not asking you to do my job. I'm the special educator. You are not trained to do what I'm doing. So please remember that you do your job as a teacher. You do your job as a school, and let the special educator tackle the intervention, because she is trained or he is trained to work on those skills. And this balance, this synergy which we have between special educators, which is me, people like me, and teachers like you, will make sure that all our kids are successful. You don't have to do my job. You have responsibility of 35, 40, 45 odd children. I understand. And you can't do my job because you're not trained, right? But both of us together can do this job beautifully. And this is how we actually divide our work. You do the accommodations and I will do the interventions. So here we go. Interventions. Who does it? It's the trained professionals. They all have training, professional qualification to do what they do. Special educators, occupational therapists, speech language therapists, clinical psychologist, physiotherapist, all those people, they have done special training to become who they are. What do? They do what is called remediation. The skills, we bridge the gaps. The child is in class 5, was working at class 2 level. We bridge the 3 years of learning gap the child has. Therapy to work on sensory deficits. So whether it's speech and language therapy, or it's occupational therapy, or it's physiotherapies, we will do the therapy work to enhance the child's performance. And where will we do it? We will do it in school resource rooms. Nowadays, almost all schools have some kind of a resource room, some very sophisticated, some very rudimentary. They have one special educator or a team, which is called the SEN department, but it can happen in school. It should happen in school, or in specialized multidisciplinary clinics, or in hospitals. So this is to do with interventions. Accommodations. Who does it? The school management decides, the principal decides, the management decides that yes, we have an inclusive policy and we are going to make sure that all children learn. Okay, no child is left behind. Who decides it? It's the teachers who decide it, and the Board of Education. When I say Board of Education, in our country, it's the Central Board of Education, which is called CBSE. It can be IB, it could be Cambridge, which is called GCSE, any board or any state board. So the Board of Education decides that these are the accommodations which we are going to give to the children who have documentation supporting their diagnosis. Okay, what is it that they can do? If all of you were to just take back this slide with you and forget everything else I say, I would say this is a success. Why? Because these are the things you can go back and start doing tomorrow. All right. So this is what we're going to do. Rate modification. The class gets 10 sums. Sarah gets 6. Curricular modification. The class does third language. Sarah gets exemption. Alternate assessment. The class does written exam, Sarah does oral exam, all right? Or she makes a project. Level of support is that they have a buddy system in the class. This works in smaller classes, especially that the partner of the child is such that he has been instructed to help the child with special needs. Placement in the classroom. Put the child closer to the front of the class rather than the back, because then the teacher can keep an eye on him. Extra time, use of special devices. In India, CBSE, the central board, allows a child with dyscalculia, a calculator, all right? The child is allowed. And what children with ID and ASD are also allowed word processors, all right? Different parameters, that means for the rest of the class, the passing marks are say 40, for this child, they are 30, all right? So we have different parameters for the class. And where do the accommodations happen? It is the different boards which decide. So is it CBSE, it's IB, it's IGCSE board. These bulleted are the accommodations which are the right of the child in India. Dropping subjects, that means a child gets to choose skill-based subjects like home science, like fruit production, like data entry, like computer science, like painting, like physical education. So these are all skill-based subjects, all right? One language formula, which basically implies out of the two languages, Hindi and English, the child has to choose one. Scribe is a writer, reader, assistive devices, like I told you, a calculator, and extra time. These are the accommodations which are allowed by the government to the child, and no school, if it's affiliated to CBSE or IB or GCSE or any state board, can say no. If they say no, it's the contempt of the court, and the parent can take action against the school. So the first step and the most sensible step is what? What is the most sensible solution? It's a multi-language solution for screening school children to facilitate early intervention. Like in all disabilities, even in specific learning disabilities, the saying that if they are caught, they can be taught is very, very, very true. You give me a child in class 9th who's working at class 3 level, there's a 6-year gap. I can't do much. But you give me a child in class 2, and I can guarantee you that within a year, I will make sure the child's on track. You catch them young where the learning gaps are not so huge, and we can bridge those gaps. So this is the sensible step. What my organization, which is called Orchids Foundation, has developed this screening app, which is called First Screen app. This is for the first time. This is available in 12 languages on both Android and iOS. This is for across the world. This is a free app available free anywhere in the world. The salient features of this app are it's both for Android and iOS devices. All of you can right now, sitting there, can download it from the Play Store or App Store on your phones, and it's free. It is for SLD, which is specific learning disabilities and related concerns. Children with ASD, mild ASD, ADHD, and slow learners have been caught. This is for school-going children, and the data providers are parents and teachers. This app was made primarily for those teachers and parents who have no access to professionals, sitting in the smaller towns or in remote areas, and they had no clue how to help their child. And the gaps in the child's learning were becoming bigger and bigger. So this was one tool given to them or made for them, so at least they start and they figure out as to what is it that is wrong with their child. There are 99 items, 3-point scale, 20 to 25 minutes per screening. And these are the languages: Hindi, English, Tamil, Kannada, Telugu, Malayalam, Marathi, Gujarati, Bengali, Punjabi, Assamese, and Urdu. These are the languages it is available in. It covers 9 domains, includes academic, mental processes, and psychomotor skills. There is a complete visual feedback report. You will see a picture of it. I will show you in a minute, which tells you what you need to do next. These are the 9 domains: reading, writing, oral language, mathematics, motor skills, attention, social skills, executive functions, and memory. And this is what the report, once a person, whether a teacher or a parent or a person who knows the child, has completed the screening questionnaire, this is the report which will come out. It will tell you which are the mild concerns, which is yellow, what are the red concerns, which are significant concerns, and the green implies that there are no concerns. And it tells you here in the next side, the right side, what are the interpretations as to what you need to do. In interpretation 1, it also suggests that please get a hearing and an eye test done, like I told you. What is coming soon is the first screen app in Spanish, the first screen app in Hebrew. I was in the US and we are in talks with people in these countries so that children, irrespective of which country, irrespective of any political boundaries, need to be helped. And that is what we want to do here. So we are open to adapting this app in any language, wherever there are people who want to do. And taking one step forward, Orchids, in partnership with ChangeInkk Foundation, which is Nupur, who just took the previous session, we are developing the first screen app for adults, focusing on college and workplace. So this is for those children, now turned adults, who were not diagnosed or who were not identified in school years and are now facing similar or worse problems in their college and in their workplace. So those kids need to be identified. So this is something which I'm sure as teachers you must have seen. Let's be open to tap the potential of differentially abled. So that's the teacher, and he says, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb the tree. So like a lineup of the animals, all of us have our different strengths and different weaknesses. So one test is not applicable to all of us. One size does not fit all. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Abray, for that enlightening session. Your expertise has provided us with a deeper understanding of what specific learning disabilities and difficulties of what specific learning disabilities are and the difficulties of individuals affected by SLDs. Also, I would request you to stay so that our participants can benefit from your expertise and insights, just in case anyone from the audience has any questions.
100%, I'm here. So I can see one question. There was one question. Nabila, I'm just going to read it out so that
Sure.
everybody can hear. How to act with children who has autism in class. Now, like I said, and I mentioned earlier, the starting steps of identification screening is the same, right? And identifying how the school can help, how the teachers can help, I've already given you as teachers. So depending upon what the child requires, those are the accommodations you need to, as teachers, need to identify and work with that. As far as making an improvement in the child's skill base, that the special educator has to do, because that's not your headache. You have other kids to take, to work with. So please be very careful. Don't try to wear too many hats. It'll get tiring, you'll burn out. Let's divide our work, but let's do a collaborative input. There is another question which says how somebody has a child with MR, how can allow to use calculator to solve these sums in a public exam. Now in India, the public exams are basically in class 10th and in class 12th, and they are allowed. The government has allowed a calculator, a simple calculator, guys, not a scientific calculator, a simple calculator to use in your math exam. However, the government is not going to come and teach your child how to use the calculator. That you and I and the educator has to do. So you have to teach them to use the calculator, to understand when to use which operation of plus, minus, divide, and multiply. However, if the child has problems with doing the actual calculations, then the government can allow you to use the assistive device. All right. Any other question, guys? There is nothing else in the chat.
Okay, so before we start with the formal Q&A session, we skipped one expert before, so I'd like to invite Dr. Rajpaksha Kumara. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Kumara, the Deputy Director of Education from the Special Education Branch. To recall, Dr. Kumara has been deeply involved in spearheading efforts to support students with special educational needs, and today he will be sharing insights into the initiatives undertaken by Sri Lanka to mainstream students with specific learning disabilities. We look forward to hearing about the strides made in creating a more inclusive education. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Kumara.
Good morning, everyone. I am very sorry for the delay, my technical errors. Can I share my presentation?
Yes, sure, sir.
Yes. Today, I hope to introduce inclusive education development strategy in Sri Lanka. Especially, I would like to present before the my session. I would like to tell we we are introduced the inclusive education system. Before inclusive education, we work by classifying children under two categories. One is special needs children. Uh, Hello, can you ask?
We can't hear you, Dr. Kumara. Uh, just let me check if there is any technical difficulty again.
Kindly speak, Dr. Kumara. We can hear you.
Is it okay, Ms. Nabila?
We can hear you, Dr. Kumara.
Yeah.
Please speak.
Uh,
Yeah, it is better now.
yeah, you should share my presentation, but I couldn't see that.
Uh, yeah, we can see your presentation.
Yeah, okay. Today we starting the inclusive education system. Uh, our education system, uh, special needs children are two categories. One is special need. Normally we call them disadvantaged environment or vulnerable group. Other team is disabilities. However, I would like to present in this foundation, uh, especially we have target two groups. One is uh, you are talking about intellectual disability or learning difficulties. I would like to present my inclusive our education inclusive system for all students. There are so many uh, activities for the inclusive education facilities. One is implementation of the pre-education policy. This is target for the poverty children, especially target our vulnerable group. And in this pre-education policy, providing opportunities for the pre-education for every child from primary education to university education. And also we have uh, adoption of the Declaration of the Right of Child in 1993 and in instrument of compulsory education regulation in 1994 mandated that every child between the age of 5 to 16 must be provided with a formal education opportunities. From the year 2016, the compulsory education age has been raised to 16 from to 14 years, and the government has issued the gazette order. Uh, and also 1994 sign of the Salamanca Delegate and the implementation of the strategy. And 2006 issued the government special gazette to provide the access facilities. Accordingly, order to construction with every access facilities on every building or every places. You know, we know disabled children can't we go to the if they don't have accessibility facilities. Now we have started the every construction must be accessibility facilities. Uh, rec- Recognition of the sign language as a national language. This is a very important to us because our deaf student can't learn learn in normal classroom because they don't know normal language. Because in this situation, Sri Lanka has uh, recognized the sign language as a national language, and also established the Department of Inclusive Education at the National Institute of Education. Before this situation, our NIE, National Institute of Education branch, uh, called Special Education branch. Now it's called by the Inclusive Education branch. And inclusive education coordinators has been appointed in 2022. Every school, they are. It is a very important chance to our Sri Lanka special needs children because this time every school has uh, inclusive education coordinator. We request the every principals and officers appoint the primary sectional head as a IE coordinator. Their main task identify the special needs children, how can support them, and other task is educated the school community because our parents don't know how can uh, support to special need children. We introduce the system for the identify how to identify special need children, how to support them home. Their IE coordinator, their job is uh, how to support special need children. Other one special circular and guideline issue the 2022 because we don't have the assessment system. Uh, perform assessment system we didn't have. We introduced the new assessment system in 2022. Now they can identify in grade H3 or H4. They our uh, assessment team they can identify the what who are the special needs in this circular. We have established the every zonal office uh, assessment committee, and we have trained all assessment committee members. Normally, these assessment committee members are five. One is primary director, other in special education director, others are special education ISS, primary ISS, and senior special education teacher. Uh, And also we have issued the new circular in 2022. In this circular, it is a very important. So it was very important because in this circular, by this circular, children with special needs disabilities are given opportunities to enter the special education unit at the age of 4. Before introduce this circular, couldn't to enter children in normal age. In this situation, within 1 year or maximum 2 years, the skill of those children should be developed and admitted to the mainstream class. We introduced the new books, new two books before 2 years. Uh, our special education teachers develop our student skills and also providing special facilities for students with disabilities appearing for the national exam. This is a very important. Today I especially you talk about this situation. Our there are three exam in national exam in our Sri Lanka national level. One is grade 5 scholarship. Second one grade 11 O level examination. Third one is university entrance exam. In this exam, we provide the many facilities to the special needs children. Especially as example, providing a braille equipment, extra time and braille papers, and also we providing the person to assistant and providing equipment for their needs. Especially today, you talk about uh, computer or calculator. We provide to if they want to calculate, if they want to computer anyone, we supply them their facilities. And also we prepare the master plan in inclusive education for the 10 years. That's a short term, mid term, and long term. This is support from by JICA team and also Ministry of Health, Department of Social Service Department. There are so many stakeholders are in here. We are supporting to inclusive education system. And also today you are talking about dyslexia, dyscalculia, other categories. Now we are preparing a guideline with the health ministry for the identify dyslexia student and how can support to in their classroom. Now it is finished, but we couldn't to issue that they are because it is not signed by secretary. We will try to issue the guideline to this year. I hope to share with after next session. And also we are supporting to special needs children. Especially, we hope to introduce IEP and UDL. Now we have introduced the IEP system, but we couldn't to train every teachers in Sri Lanka. But provincial level uh, 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 trainers, we have finished it. Uh, in this situation, our Sri Lanka details in here, this slide, normally our mainstream students are 4 millions in studying, and there are 10,000, nearly 10,000 in general school, and we have to 879 special education unit. In there are 9,476 studying in their special education unit, and also there are 30 special school in private school 27 and government school 3. That school are studying in 2,135 school student. But especially I want to tell we don't have uh, uh, data collection system for the proper system no in inclusive education children, but there are we have target nearly 2,000 disabled students now studying mainstream classroom. This is my our situation in Sri Lanka. Thank you for organizing and inviting and preparation in this program. If you have any question, now we can give the answer.
Thank you, Dr. Kumara, for giving us insights into the efforts undertaken by the Sri Lankan government towards inclusive education. So, we will open the floor for our question and answer session. This is a great opportunity for all in the audience to ask our panelists any questions you may have about the things that we have covered today. But please feel free to submit your questions through the chat box and we will address as many as we can. But meanwhile, as the questions come in, I have another exciting announcement about an upcoming initiative to make with Ms. Purnita Nambiar from ChangeInkk. It is the CEMCA in Changing Course and Mainstreaming Inclusive Initiatives. So, to discuss this, I will welcome Ms. Purnita. Purnita, can you tell us a bit about the course to us and our audiences? Purnita, can you hear me? Let me just try and reach her. I think there's a lag. Mm, she's just rejoining. Uh,
Miss Nabila.
uh, yes, sir.
Yes, I am Kumar from Sri Lanka,
Yes,
Minister
sir.
of Education. Uh, if you have any assessment tool for the dyslexia or dyscalculia in India or in Asia?
Yes, sir. So, yes, sir, I can hear you.
Yeah. Uh, can you share, if you can share, because we are preparing a toolkit for the identify dyslexia, we supported the health ministry. If you can share, it is better to us.
Let me just note down your request and I will get in touch with our experts.
Thank you very much, Priya.
Hmm. Okay. Definitely, sir, definitely. We'll discuss with our experts, or
Yeah,
if Dr. Geet Oberoi want to intervene, she can.
yeah,
So as far as the tools are concerned, there are quite a few tools in India, which are indigenous, which are based on the Indian population, and they are mostly government tools. They're made by government agencies. So, and they are pretty readily available on the website, various these or various organizations. And there are some special tools which are made by organizations and NGOs also. So, depending upon what is the need, that is what you should do. And like I was saying before, also, if there are tools already done, already made, the cultural background of Sri Lanka and India have a lot more similarities than dissimilarities. So why reinvent the wheel? Just adapt it with that is what is the key. I'm just saying, why do the whole exercise again? But of course, a pilot should be done in your country to make sure that it's valid and it's reliable. However, you'll just, you'll stand to uh, conserve your resources by doing a pilot of, using already existing tools. And if they work for you, great. It's the same thing. But I will give you, Nabila, I will give you, and I'm sure Nupur also has, quite a few names and all. I'll share the names with you, so that's not a problem.
Definitely, definitely. Nupur, you want to introduce the course or say a little about this assessment tools? Anything?
Yeah, just I think when you do the assessment tools, there'll be three levels. One is you'll need a checklist for the teachers in the classroom to be able to do it. Those are generally observation based. So we have a very short 12-pointer toolkit. The state has something, and a slightly more detailed, which ORCIDs under Dr. Geet.
She's hung, she's got frozen.
This issue is going around. I'll just check with Nupur.
I'm sorry, my system restarted.
Yeah.
Um, So I don't know till where you're heard, but you need a screening test for the teachers. The ORCID's first screen is a very good tool for that. Then you need an IQ test and you need an SLD test. There are global tests for that that need, like Geet said, need to be contextualized for Sri Lanka, and we'd be happy to support you all in that process.
Thank you, Nupur. Um, whatever information you want to give, we can give also later. Any name of the tool or anything like that. But Purnita was supposed to introduce this COL-CEMCA and changing SLD for teachers course. Would you like to say a few words about that?
Absolutely. So, based on our learnings in India, and global best practices with the support of COL-CEMCA, we have created a module. We have supported COL-CEMCA in creating a training module. It's online for learning disabilities that your teachers, educators, and people in the department can take. It will take you between 6 and 8 hours to complete. It's broken into 4 modules. One is understanding, identifying what learning disabilities are. Second is what is the remedial support required and how you give it. Third is inclusive teaching strategies and what it takes to teach these children within the classroom. And the fourth is how do you use technology. Um, the technology module in particular is designed to use low tech, readily available, non proprietary technology. The course is, while it sounds complex, is very easy for you all to take to keep yourself educated. It's filled with lots of fun videos, testimonials of uh, people who have made this happen on the ground. Generally, we believe inclusion is a high cost model. We give a lot of everyday solutions that people can, the student can include in their life, and in their practices. So we strongly urge you to go ahead and see that, take those courses. Maybe you can make it available to all your teachers, beyond the ones that have attended today. um, Nabila, please feel free to add. um,
Yeah. Okay, so we'll soon be launching this course. We are in the process of uh, deciding upon the launch plan. So I am sure Dr. Shadrach will let all of you know when it is launched. And thank you, Nupur, for sharing this wonderful initiative. This course hopefully will be a transformative step in equipping educators with the knowledge and skills that they need to foster inclusion in classroom. So, it looks like that we don't have any questions from the audience as of now. And seeing as we are already hard pressed for time, let's move ahead with the concluding remark from Dr. Shadrach. But audiences are always welcome to write to us on skills@semca.org or edtech@semca.org. And if any of you have any questions later on, you can always write to us. The email IDs will be in the chat box also. So let me quickly invite our next speaker to deliver the concluding remark for today's insightful discussion. I'm honored to invite Dr. Bashir Ahmed Shadrach, the director of SEMCA. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Shadrach for the closing remark.
Can you hear me, Nabila? Can you hear me? No.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. As concluding remarks, I don't have much to say other than the fact that as Commonwealth of Learning, we are there to support the member countries, particularly Sri Lanka and in the Commonwealth Asian nations. So any request that would come from Mr. Neil Vatakarawata and colleagues at MOE, Sri Lanka, we would be happy to respond to those. So I would encourage Mr. Neil to consider any need and come to us with that need. And as you can see, we have very good partners in ChangeInkk Foundation. We have ORCIDs who are partners of ChangeInkk. We have quite a few other partners like IIT Kanpur, and we can help you launch a course. We can take the mantle together with you in equipping all your teachers to understand more about specific learning disabilities. We did this in the island nation of Mauritius. We can do this also for Sri Lanka. And next week, this time, we are likely to have a similar program in the Maldives. So I welcome Mr. Neil to come back to us with any requests that you might have. Earlier, you heard from Dr. Geetu Broy that she may be willing to also produce the app that she was referring to in the Sinhala language as well. Probably it's already operational in Tamil and English. So we are there to help you, and we are looking forward to our continued relationship. Kindly convey my regards to Mrs. Tilaka Jayasundara, the secretary, and also others out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shadrach, for acknowledging our partners in the closing remark. Your words remind us of the collective responsibility we share in ensuring inclusive education for all, and how collaboration will be key in moving forward. Finally, to bring this webinar to a close, I'd like to invite Mr. Neil to deliver the vote of thanks. Mr. Neil has been an integral part of organizing today's event, and we are grateful for his support. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Neil.
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for the inconvenience, our technical error here. Dr. Kumar and myself login same place. Ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude this enlightening webinar on capacity building for policymakers and teachers in the realm of special needs children's education, I would like to take a moment to express our heartfelt gratitude. First and foremost, I would like to extend our sincere thanks to the Commonwealth Educational Media Center for Asia for organizing this vital program. Your commitment to enhancing the educational landscape for special needs children is commendable and greatly appreciated. To our esteemed speakers and facilitators, a big thank you for sharing your invaluable insights and expertise. Your contributions have not only enriched our understanding but have also equipped us with practical strategies to uplift our standards of students. I would also like to thank the Secretary of Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, Madam Tilaka Jayasundara, for her guidance towards this. She conveyed her special thanks to the organizers. Also, I would like to thank the Additional Secretary of the Ministry of Education for School Affairs, Madam Rukmali Karyosam, the Director of Non-Formal Education Branch, Mr. Gunatilaka, Deputy Director here with me, Dr. Kumar Rajapaksa, the officers of the Primary Education Branch and the Assistant Directors of Foreign Agencies and External Affairs, my branch, Madam Ishanti Javadran staff, for the support given to organize this event, and all provincial directors, island nine provincials in Sri Lanka, and subject directors, deputy directors, assistant directors, we thank. I would also like to acknowledge the educators, principals, and all the teachers who joined today's workshop. Your dedication to improve your skills and knowledge for the benefit of your students is truly inspiring. It is through your effort that we can create a more inclusive and supportive educational environment. Last but not least, I encourage everyone to take the knowledge gained today to apply in your classrooms, share with your friends, and together we can make a significant difference in the lives of those needy children. Thank you once again for your participation and commitment to this worthy cause. We look forward to seeing your future events. On behalf of the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, my special thanks goes to Dr. B. Shadrach, the Director of COL-CEMCA, for coordinating and superb organizing of this capacity building program. Thank you, Ms. Nabila. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you, everyone. So I think we are at the close of the session. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.